not criticize ideas, as that is seen as a way to kind of stop creativity. So a lot of ideas might not seem very useful, but could prompt other ones to be thought of. So after a group comes up with enough ideas, the group appraises the ideas and will improve upon the weaker ones and remove the obviously impractical ones until they can narrow it down to a few and finally choose the plan of action. A common characteristic of these groups would be like enthusiasm. And could you think of any of these groups in our school? Are there any examples of this?
Like student government's supposed to come up with ideas for like activities.
I was kind of thinking of like class meetings when everybody, Mr. Brandt just raises his hand, okay, can anybody think of ideas for prom?
Yes.
In ours, we do fundraiser too, like ideas for fundraisers.
So advisory groups are meant to develop and submit recommendations to others to help them make decisions. For me, I thought the most obvious example of this that shows up a lot would be like when you talk about or hear about the president choosing his cabinet and stuff like that. It's not possible for like high-ranking government officials or company owners to be an expert in every aspect of everything that they control over. So advisors compensate for whatever the leader might be lacking to help him or her make good decisions. Quality improvement teams usually include 3 or more people with distinct skills or knowledge, and they work together to improve the quality in an organization. They're usually made up of people from different areas or like ranks in the hierarchical system of an organization to get everybody's opinion out there, and they often focus on complaints, so they can get to like the bottom of issues and try to make just everything generally better for everybody involved. So they keep management of these organizations and informed of their suggestions or like the state of their company. Decision-making groups, this one is pretty self-explanatory, but they just help make decisions. But the book gives an example of a standard agenda for solving problems, and it kind of goes in steps. So the first step would be like defining the problem, and then analyzing information relevant, generating ideas, identifying possible solutions, selecting a solution, and then implementing it, and seeing how it works. Do you think you've ever solved a problem this way, unconsciously?
Probably.
You probably do it without doing it.
What did I say?
Consciously.
Okay, so there are potential limitations of groups. So kind of like disadvantages of what like group discussions they may have, time needed for the group. So you may not always have as much time as you want. Like for example, class meetings, they're usually 25 minutes long or 15 minutes long, and you can't discuss everything that you want to. So you have to limit what you talk about. Like you can't let everyone talk about what they want to talk. You have to come up with like a majority of what the people want. And there's potential of conformity, which the complications of rules, excuse me, of rules and standards, and they interfere with decision making. So, like I said, it takes time for each individual to get their thoughts. And when problems occur with conformity, the group it can be like the majority of the group shares an opinion, but there may be one person that doesn't like share their opinion. So it could be like the majority of the group and one person, they don't have the same opinion about an issue. So you have to come up with a solution to solve both issues instead of because they can cause problems, like the person may not believe what the group says, and you want everyone to be on the same page. And most effective groups all share the same opinions. And Wood talks about how conformity can also arise when one member has more power than the other members, which can make one member not share their idea because it goes against what the higher person believes, and that can cause a problem. But there are also potential strengths of a group, and potential strengths of a group versus just an individual. So there greater resources than an individual, and Wood points out that the groups enhance ideas and experiences and has more expertise than an individual. And an example would be like more like if someone like in the medical field knows how to like perform surgery or like they can give their like expertise or resources if someone is new and they need help. And they're more thoroughly thought through, and by one member of a group, if one member does not understand an issue, another can help them like understand it better. And they heighten creativity, so everyone's ideas and perspectives and diversity, they can all like be important to the group because they can all share their ideas in a group to help the group pick an opinion or help with the issue or solve a problem. And enhance commitment, because if it's just an individual and they're not committed, then the idea, like the issue dies. But if more people are committed to a group, then like it helps the group because there's more people involved and the issues can be solved better. And Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 9 through 12 says, two are better off than one because together they can work more effectively. If one of them falls down, the other can help him up. But if someone is alone and falls, it's just too bad because there is no one to help them. If it is cold, two can sleep together and stay warm, but how can you keep warm by yourself? Two people can resist an attack that would defeat one person alone. A rope made of 3 cords is hard to break. And synergy is a special kind of collaborative virality that enhances efforts, talents, and strengths of an individual.
So, Wood describes several features of small groups. Groups and teams heavily rely on members' ability to participate effectively, which really depends on how well they communicate. So, Wood discusses 5 features of small groups. The first feature is cohesion. Cohesion is the degree of closeness among members of the group. It's created by communication that creates a feeling of inclusion for members of the group. It really affects participation and so like highly cohesive groups are really tightly linked. So like similarities between group members can also really fuel cohesion. And one thing that can come from this though is groupthink, and that's where everybody in the group seems to operate under like a single mind. But this can also be positive or negative. It could be good because everybody's kind of on the same track. They don't have to deal with that many issues or stuff like that. But one common symptom would be that they assume that their group, since they're all thinking the same thing, can't really mess up, and bad ideas might not be sorted out as much. Another thing that affects groups is the group size. So the size of smaller groups, or the size of the group affects the amount of quality communications. I take this class for an example. There are 5 students in it, and we all have to talk a lot. But if it was a group if it was, say, a class of 30, everybody wouldn't be able to say necessarily everything that they'd like to. So, yeah, as group size increases, each member tends to contribute less. Another important aspect is power structure, which is the ability to power is the ability to influence others in their achievement of goals. So, power over is the ability, or there are 2 distinct types of power that are described. Power over is the ability to like help or harm others, where you have more power than them. But power 2 is the ability to empower others. I think of it in this example. An example of this would be like the team leader would have power over, but all the members would have power to the team leader to make them lead. There are also 2 distinct types of power structures that are shown. A distributed power structure occurs when all the members have roughly the same amount of power, and a hierarchical power group or structure occurs when one member has more power than the others. Could you think of an example of where this might be seen in school?
Like the administration's like a distributed power structure because they have more power than technically the teachers do.
Okay. Social climbing is another thing where people attempt to gain power by being friends with the people who have power. The thing that popped into my head was when freshmen always sit with the seniors. They always, yeah. So power influences communication. Interaction patterns also greatly affect groups. Centralized patterns usually occur when one or two people hold central positions and have the most communication pass through them. A good example of this would be a teacher in a classroom. They kind of control most of what's being done. So decentralized patterns involve more balanced communication, which, depending on where you sit, might be your lunch table. And decentralized patterns usually occur when all members have roughly the same power. The final aspect is group norms, which are guidelines that members follow. For example, one that I always thought of was where people sit in a class. Everybody usually sits in roughly the same area. And if somebody doesn't, this class starts to get worried, or
Uproar.
somebody else loses their seat and it messes everything up. So norms affect how members interact with each other, and they often affect how a group handles conflict. A few other examples of group norms might be like meeting time or whether food is allowed.
So there are guidelines for communication in groups and teams, and as Wood says, groups must be able to realize the strengths and to avoid problems in their groups by participating constructively, provide leadership, and manage conflict. So, like I talked about earlier, the three skills that we talked about, task, procedural, and climate communication, help with participating constructively, and because procedural communication obviously helps keep a group organized and to stay on track and to manage their time, and the climate communication helps create a group create and maintain a constructive climate, allowing others to express their ideas freely, and task communication provides ideas and information for the group. There's also a fourth kind of communication, and it is egocentric communication, and it is dysfunctional, for it calls attention to oneself and blocks others' ideas. It's practically someone saying, my ideas are better, so listen to me, and like not participating in the group and not letting the group speak for themselves. He's just practically the person is practically speaking for the group and not with the group. So another aspect to participate constructively is you need to provide leadership. So leadership is when people organize their groups, ensure research and reasoning, create a productive climate, promote norms, and discourage egocentric communication. And this can not only be just one person, it could be a handful of people in the group. And I don't know if you guys can think of like an example here where there's more than just one leader in the school.
For me, we did prom steering committee last year. Mary and I were both like the co-chairs.
Yeah, that's Jesse and I are both co-chairs. We work together. Do you have any, Jeremiah? Any examples?
No.
You can. Okay. So this set of this helps the group move along, and they just help the groups move along and to stay organized. And another thing is it can to manage conflict constructively. You have to explain that in chapter 7 that we learned that conflict is natural, and it can be productive. But conflict can help groups to think and consider others' perspectives and enlarge members' understanding of issues involving decision makings. So there is distributive communication, and this is conflict. This is when a conflict is distributive when it interferes with healthy communication and effect work. And then there's competitive. This can be competitive communication as members argue amongst each other to get their way. Kind of like when argues. I don't know. That's one of the things when we argue with teachers. It can be very distributive communication when we talk about a group project or just
class meetings.
In class meetings, exactly. When we're trying to be productive.
Him and Miss Nelson, I've heard. Get into it.
There's also constructive conflict when it occurs when other people in the group understand that disagreement are natural. So that's a good thing to understand that it's okay that we're all going to disagree because we're not just all the same. God made us different and individual, obviously. But we have to encourage this, and it is important to communicate in ways that build a strong climate from start. So when conflicts come about, it is easier to establish and to ensure. Yeah, and these are our sources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yay.
You're allowed to go. Thank you. Okay, now you can stop.